Black and Caspian Sea. That is there because maybe we want to come to this point now, but there have been so many deities excavated in the Central Asian and European regions. That are Vedic deities. There was one deity of Vishnu that was excavated in very close to Caspian Sea. Another province mentioned in Mahabharata, that of the Yavanas Turks, named so for being descendants of Maharaj Yavana or Vasus, one son of Yayati, as already mentioned. He gave up the Vedic culture and became legend. They fought on the side of Duryodhana. However, it was predicted that they would one day return to conquer Bharatvarsha. See, that's very interesting. They would return to conquer Bharatvarsha. And indeed, Muhammad Ghori later attacked and conquered parts of India on behalf of Islam from the Papira and Yamana Turkish countries. It's all there in the Shastra. So then there was another migration. So one we had from Yayati, right? That was it. Then there was another Mahabharata. Disappearance of Saraswati River resulted in expansion of the desert. Aryans who migrated west lost touch with the Vedic roots. Thus Sumerian and Egyptian communities developed. Kassites, Hittites, Mitanni, Celts, and Scythians. You already mentioned some. Kassites and Hittite, very interesting. They're just Aryan. They have Indo-European. They were speaking Indo-European language. They're not Semitic, and there are quite some archaeological evidences which we won't have time to present this session. But there were also sheep-headed Chikas. They were invoke Vedic deities when they would have certain political or whatever kind of agreements. There were some tablets that have been found. So the Kassites, Hittite, Mitanni, they were quite known if you study general history in the region of nowadays Mesopotamia, Iran, Iraq, mostly Iraq, and then eastern Turkey, Syria. That's where they live. Celts, we said already, Celts were inhabiting Europe, and then later being pushed by other tribes like Slavic, German, or Roman. They moved further west. Celts are nowadays in Ireland, some remnants of those, Ireland, Britain, Scotland. Those are Celts. And Scythians, we said, they were in the Central Asia. So English Druids claim their origin from east as far back as almost 4,000 years. No, that's more. Back as BC, so that's like, phew, that's a long time. According to recent racial study, the history and geography of human genes confirm that all the people of Europe, the Middle East, and India belong to a single Caucasian type race. Okay, so Prabhupada said the Vedic culture was all over the world. These European and Americans, they are coming from the same stock, Indo-Aryan stock. That's why I have Indo-European language. And so many similarities. And then there's another migration. What is that other migration? He says, Parashuram, the Lord killed all the Kshatriya kings 21 times because of the king's dishonesty. From the history of the Mahabharata, it can be understood that at that time, some of the Kshatriyas fled and took shelter in Europe, and consequently, modern Europeans are descendants of those Kshatriyas. So that's another cause that Parashuram was killing all those who had fallen from the Vedic culture or become degraded in some ways or misusing the Vedic culture, and they chased them. Either he killed them or chased them out of broader India. So while all civilizations, excluding the Vedic civilization, clearly record external sources of their origins, only Vedic Indian civilization claims not to be only indigenous to India, but to have been the source of global civilization. See, very interesting. So when we read the Shastra, I said, okay, Vedic culture was throughout the world, and it's prominent in Bharatvarsha. Whereas any other culture, as we said, points out its origin from the east. So Clement of Alexandria mentions that Pythagoras learned from Brahmins, among others. So many accounts that many scholars or religious people from Europe have been desiring, at least if not some of them, coming to India to learn some sciences or some principles of religion. Eusebius is quite famous Christian theologian that was in 300 AD, long time back. So he says that on account told by Aristoxenus, one of Aristotle's pupils, of a meeting between Socrates and a group of Indian Brahmins. That's like Socrates, he believed in soul, no? Transmigration, and so many other principles that are known in the Greeks and influenced the philosophy. So the analogies between Greek Pythagorean philosophy and the Sankhya school are very obvious. It is impossible to read Vedanta or the many fine compositions and illustration of it without believing that Pythagoras and Plato derived their sublime theories from the same fountain with the Indian sages. Even we know that actually Pythagoras' theorem was known in India from Shulva Shastras centuries before. William Jones came to India, so that's what he said. Quite prominent personality. Voltaire, one of the greatest philosophers, he said, it's very important to know that some 2,500 years ago, at least Pythagoras went from Samos to Ganges to learn geometry. But he would certainly not have undertaken such a strange journey had the reputation of the Brahmin science had not been long established in Europe. So he said that when? He said that even before British came to India. He lived from, what is that really? This is this century. 16th, 17th century. I'm convinced that everything has come down to us from the banks of Ganges, astronomy, astrology, metempsychosis, etc. And Leopold von Schröder, German Indologist, he said Pythagoras and the Indians, examining the origin and derivations of ideas of Pythagoras. Nearly all the philosophical and mathematical doctrines attributed to Pythagoras are derived from India. Pierre Sonnerat, French naturalist, said ancient India gave to the world its religions and philosophies. Egypt and Greece own India their wisdom, and it's known that Pythagoras went to India to study under Brahmins, who were the most enlightened of human beings. William Temple. Okay, he said, from these famous Indias, it seems most probable that Pythagoras learned and transported into Greece and Italy the greatest part of natural and moral philosophy, rather than from Egyptians. Nor does it seem unlikely that the Egyptians themselves must have drawn so much of their learning from India. So it doesn't seem unlikely, so that could have also happened. Of course, according to Vedic Shastra, they also were connected. And there are so many connections, there are so many deities that they worship, that their form and principles are exactly alike as in the Vedic scriptures. So it said, so long before Lycurgus, who likewise traveled to India, brought from thence also the chief principles of his law. I don't know who that was, somebody they reframed. So Rolling Stone, British historian, he says, it is more likely that Pythagoras was influenced by India than by Egypt. Almost all the theories, religions, philosophical, mathematical taught by Pythagoras were well known in India in the 6th century BC. And the Pythagoreans, like the Jains and the Buddhists, refrained from destruction of life and eating meat and regarded certain vegetables, such as beans, as taboo. So Pythagoras was a vegetarian, he believed in reincarnation. Very interesting. So here we have a little bit about Indo-European languages. I said Sanskrit, Persian, medieval and modern Indo-Aryan languages, Farsi, Hindi, Urdu, Marathi, Bengali. And then they divided it's Old Slavic, Russian, Polish, Czech, Slovenian, Croatian, Macedonian, German, English, Swedish, Norwegian, Danish, Greek, Latin, Roman, Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese. So this is how languages are collected. So there's a whole discussion now about so many different languages, but let's see now a little bit. Latin and Persian are dialects of Sanskrit. Greek has a lot of it. French, German, Russian, English are full of it. Not only were many words obviously the same, but German philologist Franz Bopp found that the grammar, specifically the verb structure and endings of these languages are also similar. Very extensive work was done in the science of phonetics in ancient India, and finer shades of sound produced in the pronunciation were standardized. However, in the West, the science of phonetics came up only recently. So Sanskrit is considered the mother of all higher languages. This is because it is the most precise and therefore the most suitable language for computer software. Principles for construction of protocol, writing code. Anyway, so older than Hebrew and Latin, more scientific and systematic language, the vastness and versatility and power of expression can be appreciated by the fact that this language has 65 words to describe various forms of earth, 67 words for water, and over 350 words to describe rainfall. Very rich. The Sanskrit language, however, by its antiquity, is of a wonderful structure, more perfect than the Greek, more copious than the Latin, and more exquisitely refined than either. Yet, bearing to both of them a stronger affinity, both in the roots and verb and in forms of grammar. The Panini grammar reflects the wondrous capacity of human brain, which till today no other country has been able to produce except India. Anyway, so there's a lot of praise for the Sanskrit language, which we said is the origin of all the other European languages. Lots of different scholars here. Anyway, I won't read it. If you want, there's a lot about it. A lot. Quite known and famous. Anyway. Of course, Jiva Goswami wrote Harina Vyakara based on Krishna's names. You want to learn grammar? Just learn about Krishna's names. Not to Krishna's names. Sanskrit. Okay, this is something interesting. You see this? Everybody can see this? Different cases? No? Can see this? Everybody can read this? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes? Sure? So I don't have to repeat. King Kula Shekhar. Who is King Kula Shekhar? Nobody knows? King Kula Shekhar. One of the Alvars of South India, no? One of the weapons of Lord Vishnu personified, no? So he appeared as an Alvar, as a king also. And he was composing very beautiful prayers to the deities. And he was a very righteous king, of course. He was establishing the Dharma. So anyway, so he wrote Krishna in different cases. So here it is. So, Krishna, so there is a verse here. Anyway. Krishna Rakshatu no Jagat Traya Guru Krishna Namadhvam Sada Krishna Krishnena Kila Shatavo Vinihata Krishnaya Tasmai Namaha Krishna Deva Samut Jagat Idam Krishnasya Dasosmi Aham Krishna. Tishtati Vishwam Etat Akilam He Krishna Rakshasvam. Okay, so what does that mean? It says that may Krishna, the spiritual master of the three worlds, protect us. Continually bow down to Krishna. Krishna has killed all our enemies. Obeisances to Krishna. From Krishna alone this world has come into being. I'm the servant of Krishna. This entire universe rests within Krishna. Oh Krishna, please protect me. It's such a beautiful composition which includes all the cases. No? All 8 cases. It's like very interesting. Okay. So there are many linguistic similarities. I'll just show you this and we'll end just in a few seconds. So that you see from the linguistic point of view, we have something about historical, we have something about linguistic. We'll see maybe some other time, maybe something else about religious, archaeological, and so forth. But just you can see the linguistic ones. So this family ties, basic verbs, pronouns, bodily parts, numbers, verbal conjunctions, individual linguistic correlations. Okay. So it's like, what is the point? The point is, let's say British came here and they tried to establish their superiority. No? But actually the whole British language, culture, everything practically is derived from where? It's derived from India. No? So I see here in Sanskrit, how much of it, how much present it is. Okay, so here you have family ties. You have different languages here now. You have Sanskrit, and you have Greek, Latin, English, German, Spanish, Italian, and Slavic. No? Now you see, Pitar, Pitri, Mata, Rata, what is that? Svasa, Ruhita, Sunusha, Snusha. Where is this Russian fellow? Yes, preparing for drama. What's the count of preparing for drama? Better to see the presentation. We would have been able to tell you in Russian. It's pretty similar. Really almost the same. This is very, it's like brata. Brata, father, brother, fratello. See? Brata. This is the most, the most close kind. It's very simple. It's very simple. You can see how the languages are. And you can see basic verbs. It's also to be, to give, stanza, to ask, to wake up, to know, to drink, to go. And you can see cardinal numbers. How close this is. It's very good. I can see. Eka, Odin, Dve, Dva, Tri, Chaturn, Chit, Panch, Pat, whatever. Depends how you pronounce it, it's not exactly what. It's so similar. So similar. Cardinal numbers, ordinal numbers, pronouncing adverbs, bodily parts, and so on. Then there's so many different words that have so much, practically sometimes same meaning and so much of the similarity. And what to speak of grammatical compositions and roots of the words. There's a lot anyway. So I want to. So anyway, presentation continues. There are a lot of details. That'll be more interesting for someone who's from those places because they will find that correlation than maybe for you. So therefore we will stop. Any questions on this? Maybe we can highlight something. Any questions? Can you hold it? Anybody has any questions? So what was the point of this presentation? The point of this presentation was to give you some glimpse of what the Shastra says. The Shastra says the Vedic culture was present worldwide. And we find so much evidence, in spite of so many destructive forces and times and cultures that have gone through, that still there is so much evidence to point that Vedic culture was a worldwide culture. It was present, especially when we talk about religion, when we talk about the deities. We'll see maybe some other time. We'll show you some presentations how you could see that there are so many similarities, so much connection also. But specifically now you can see through the language. That's one of the very famous, like for history, language, and we said there are so many other cultural, astronomy, archaeology, and so many other evidences to point out that there was a great culture present worldwide. Okay, any questions? So we get some faith in the Shastra. So Shastra says so. Says so. Okay, if there are any questions, then what? We have Brahmana? Okay, get ready. Hare Krishna.